Welcome back to Profile, or welcome to Profile Part 2, I should say, of my interview with Dr. Terri-Karelle Reid. And when we ended last week's episode, we were talking about the challenge. And I didn't forget the challenge that you were experiencing in high school. What was it?
I was in second form at the time, and I remember up to that point, everything was fine, everything was normal, and then we just ended up in a very rough patch where my grandmother was reading the Gleaner one day, and then she realized that the house was being put up for auction, and then it was a matter of money just wasn't, we were handling money, light cut off, water cut off. It was just absolutely rough, and I remember asking God in my private time, why? Why us? We lived good with people, we didn't give any trouble. Why was this happening to us? And it's kind of interesting because it was my grandmother who reminded me of it when I took her for her normal checkup. And she said, you remember when we used to go to KFC with our plastic bottles? And I just sat there and I said, yes, I remember. When the water was cut off, we would go to KFC at the Portmore Mall, and we would fill up our plastic bottles, and that is how we would wash the dishes, and and I could talk about all of these things during this period that was just rough. I was taking the bus to school, to Campion College, so I would take a bus to Halfway Tree, then I'd have to get another transport from Halfway Tree to Campion College, and I give God thanks for Miss Shaw, who used to work in the office, because she used to give me lunch money, and I could have sat down and said, woe is me, woe is me. But what I remember is that during that period of time, my uniforms were never dirty. I was never late. I was never absent. And I remember I tied for first place in second form with Trevor David Road. I would never forget Trevor David Road, because we were always in a very competitive environment. And I think it was that moment, it was very pivotal, but it was for me to understand at that time that there are things that I will not be able to control. That's how life is. I don't have any answers for why we experienced that rough patch and why it was us. All I know is that I could control how I responded, how I reacted, how I chose to show up. And so I was still going to school, still motivated, still inspired, understanding that this will only be for a time. This is temporary.
Were your grandmother and mother also sort of reinforcing that? As in, were they acknowledging that things were different, or were they simply, just rolling with the punches?
I think there was some acknowledgement, but after a while, it was just rolling with the punches. I think it was just understanding that outside of what you can't control, you just kind of have to push through, see it through, and I think that's the personality a lot of people see within me in terms of how I approach things. It's not going to go according to plan, but what are the things you can control? And so I think that is when I realized that my excellence is unconditional. How I show up and where I show up and how my attitude and approach is to life is not dependent on other people. It is solely dependent on me. And if I can't do it for myself, then who is going to come and save me?
So this sort of set the challenge, with the groundwork rather, for you to be able to deal with the challenges that you were encountering in Cuba.
Oh, absolutely. And to still be able to hold your head with pride, understanding that you're not defined by these circumstances or situation. It does not diminish you. It does not devalue you. If anything, it teaches you that this is life.
But
it's going to throw you curveballs.
But at the same time, another curveball was about to come.
Oh, yeah.
Because you headed back to Jamaica and then understood that you are not going to be able to practice.
Imagine, you run up and down with cow and goat and chicken, and you have to do surgery, and you're speaking in Spanish, and you finally graduate broke. You're a broke student when you come home from school. And my mom, she accompanied me up to, the vet board, because you have to kind of tell them, okay, you're back, and you carry your certificates. And they were just like, yeah, congrats. But we do not accredit students who study veterinary medicine in Cuba. And I remember just being like, so what exactly does that mean? Mm-hmm. And the suggestion was, well, you can go to University of the West Indies in Trinidad, St. Augustine, or you can go to Alabama for another 3 years or so. And I was just like, that's not happening. Will I get a scholarship? I would need support. And when I left the office, I remember my mother was in tears, and she just kind of said, what are we going to do? Because you don't have anything else. You did the sciences. There are no fallback subjects. And I just remember saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but I just know that the God that I serve is not going to bring me here and just drop me like that. There has to be another reason. And just like that, my personality is I'm not going to sit down and worry about it in the moment. For me, it's okay. Where do I go? What do I do next? It's the attitude and it's the approach to life.
And so this sort of led you on the path of, I would say, perhaps the best description of it is marketing and communication. No, you can talk, you can present yourself, but at the same time, your training was in veterinary medicine. So how were you convincing people that, yeah, I can do this? I can do not just this, but anything.
Well, the thing is, I don't think I was convincing people. I think people were convincing me that I had the ability. And it's just so funny. It's eerie, but it's also funny how a lot of us have our heart hell-bent on a particular career. And everything, we have our blinders on. And when it doesn't work out, we feel defeated. We feel like failures because we are not pursuing the career that we went out to do. And we possibly feel like disappointments. And sometimes it's just not our calling, right? And so when persons started to tell me, you ever think about media? In fact, it was Neville Bell and Simon Koskill who, when I won I didn't even win the title yet, Miss Jamaica World. We were just finalists and we were all being interviewed on the Smile Jamaica set. And Simon and Neville looked at me and said, what are you studying? And at the time I said, well, I have 1 more year to complete veterinary medicine. Simon said, nah, man, you're going to be a media vet. So after I won the title and I came back for my first interview, Simon and Neville then say, no, you are the media vet. So they had told me from a long time, you're not going to work as a vet. You're going to work in media. And all there was for me to do was to be curious enough and to have an approach and an attitude that said I am open to learning. I have absolutely nothing to lose if I give it my best shot, I bet on myself, and I allow myself to learn from the people around me. And 11 years later, I am considered a media practitioner. Untrained, unqualified, but just honing a craft and working on my craft to the point where this is really where my calling has always been, apparently.
And just being yourself at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm grateful that I had producers like Sharon and persons who worked with me who
Sharon
never...
Troughton, also a producer on Profile.
Absolutely. Who never tried to say, well, this is what media looks like, and this is what people out of Karimak look like, and this is how they behave. They actually looked at my strengths and said, we want you to be just the way you are. And it worked. It worked for me and it worked for anyone who happens to be an audience, whether I'm hosting TV or an event.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about that brand that you have developed and how you maintain it. And we have to talk a little bit about the marriage. There's so many things to talk about, but we have to go to the break.
Archie, all the time, Archie.
So we're going to go to the break, and after the break, we're going to, I guess we would say, whop it back. Can you say that? And talk a little bit about that experience, Miss Jamaica, then talk about the marriage and motherhood. Much more to come on Profile. Stick around. We are back right after these messages.